Welcome to the Irish Snug Podcast.
Today on the Irish Snug, we're joined with a true giant of golf journalism. For decades, he's been one of the definitive voices of the game. As a longtime senior writer for Sports Illustrated, he's covered more than 150 tournaments, earned the prestigious Golf Writers Association of America Award, and authored over a dozen books, including the groundbreaking Tour Tempo and Tiger 2.0. But today, we're pulling up a stool to travel him back to the wild edge of County Mayo, to the town of Belmullet and the legendary dunes of Carne Golf Links. This isn't just a golf destination. For both of us, it's a homecoming. Belmullet is the home of my own grandparents and the exact corner of Ireland where John's great-grandfather left behind for America. We're diving into his incredible book, Ancestral Links, a golf obsession spanning generations, a masterpiece that is part memoir, part travelogue, and a beautiful testament to how the game of golf binds families together across oceans and eras. John Garrity, welcome to the Snug.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How was that introduction? Was that all right?
That was fantastic.
Accurate?
Yeah, I don't think I can argue with any of it.
All right, very
I
good.
got just for confirmation, I guess, got to hold up the book.
Oh, I got my copy right here.
Okay, very good. This is a lesson from past promotional tours from 20 years ago. Authors are always told, in fact, my sister used to coach authors for television and radio appearances. And one of the things is I think you were supposed to answer every question with something like, well, as I wrote in my book, Ancestral Links, available at bookstores everywhere. I'm a little out of practice.
That's okay. That's all right. This is a podcast. This is so informal. This is just it's me and you talking, and hopefully, we have a few people that are interested in this particular topic. Which you travel to Ireland, you're Irish. When I'm in Ireland, whether I'm there just for fun or visiting family, whenever I'm in a pub or hanging out, somebody's always asking me, "Are you here for the golf?" It's like the question I get everywhere I go. Sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not, but it
Mhm.
is a question that comes out every single time. How long are you home for? And are you here for the golf?
Yep, good questions. Usually pretty easy to answer, particularly in my case. Although I've been going back to Belmullet just about every year for the last 20 or 25 years. And so, yes, I'm going back for the Carne Golf Links uh, to go out walking in those dunes again and enjoy the Atlantic and the offshore islands and two different bays, all visible from the highest dunes. But at the same time, it's also a homecoming now because the place has become a second home for me.
Had you ever gone to Belmullet prior to even learning about Carne Golf Links?
Yes, exactly. Well, maybe I can tell that story, which in a more long-winded way I do in the book. But I was in a car sometime in the early 2000s with the golf course architect from Colorado, Jim Eng. It was pre-dawn. He was driving us to the airport to go visit one of his golf courses up in the Rockies. And while we were driving, he was telling me about his recent Ireland golf trip. He loves Irish golf courses. And he said, there's a new course here now that is now my second favorite golf course in the world. Of course, I immediately asked, what's your first? And it was Ballybunion at that time. But anyway, he said, it's the Carne Golf Links. And I said, never heard of it. Where is it? He says, it's in the most godforsaken, out of the way corner of Ireland, a little place that nobody ever heard of called Belmullet. And my reaction was sort of the typical jaw drop. I said, Jim, I've not only heard of Belmullet, I've been there. That's the town that my great-great-grandfather emigrated from during the famine times. Great-great-grandmother as well. And so that answers your question. I was there originally in 1989, and my first trip to Ireland with my wife, Pat, who was a Gallagher from Northern Ireland, but in America, her family were Gallaghers. Gallaghers or Gallaghers, depending on your pronunciation. And it was our first trip together, and we were sort of exploring where we were from. And my dad was still alive at that time, but he'd grown up in a little town in Wisconsin called New Richmond, not far from Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I asked him about where our family came from, and he really didn't know anything about it at all, other than his understanding was that it was County Mayo, and that's about it. But just before we were about to make this first trip to Ireland, I called sort of an adoptive brother of his, a judge in New Richmond, and said we were going to Ireland, and did he know anything about our family? And he said, "Oh, yes, your great grandfather was born in Belmullet in County Mayo, and your great grandmother was from Glencastle, just up the road." Kind of blew my mind that there actually was somebody on the face of the earth who had that information. So that caused us to put Belmullet on our travel list, and it gave me the first opportunity to go and explore this place that I'd never heard of before that day.
Going back to your wife's maiden name, what was the spelling of that where you had two different?
Oh gosh, don't ask me to spell it. I'm not even sure I pronounce it correctly. For decades, I've been saying Gallagher, and that's what everybody, when we visited her aunts and cousins over there, seemed to be saying. But more recently, I've heard, I can't even remember a pronunciation, Gallagher or something like that.
Mhm.
So I could be completely off base. But over here, uh, her father was involved in an IRA bombing of a bridge when he was a teenager, and he was captured. This was in Newry, Armagh, outside Belfast. And he was on the verge of being hung or shot. I'm not quite sure which, but his grandmother pleaded to the British general and demanding mercy. And so he was given the option of being hung or shot, or going to America or Australia and never coming back.
Oh,
He
I know
decided to
what
go
I
to
would pick.
Chicago. Yeah, he thought Chicago was the better option, and that's how my wife to be, ended up growing up in south side of Chicago, Evergreen Park, in a very large Irish community in that area.
And did you say that it became Gallagher?
Yes, her father came over through Canada, and whatever it was, I think was the same as when we used to come through Ellis Island. Uh, you'd give your name, and they'd write down whatever they heard. Uh,
Exactly.
and if it
That
wasn't
hap
easy, yeah, and if it wasn't easy, they just go to a familiar name that everybody around there had there, and Gallagher or Gallagher,
Yeah, that's been brought up
was
on the podcast a few
very common.
times, the
Yes,
spelling of people's names and the
yes,
pronunciation, and a lot of times when they came here, they didn't read or write,
right,
so they just spoke it to whoever was writing it down, and if they had a very, strong Irish accent, it was getting written down a different,
exactly.
totally different way.
Well, we should clarify that the Garrities that we're talking about from Ireland spell it Geraghy. And there were a few of those here in the States, but most Garrities, once they got over here, get more of an anglicized type spelling, or Garrity with one R instead of two, GE instead of GA, just every combination that you could think of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very common. Another name from that Beaumullet area, my father's grandmother was Margaret Taher. So Taher, there's still loads of Tahers,
Right.
obviously, in that area, but I think a lot of them, when they came to America, that GH in the middle had kind of a k in it.
Yeah.
So it changed to Tucker. So there's a lot of people in this country whose last name is Tucker, who originally were Taher.
Yes, as is the case of Fiona Tucker, or whatever pronunciation you're going to use, who's the uh, golf manager, general manager of the Carne
She's a
Golf Links.
Taher. Yeah, she's a Taher,
Yes.
but I think, and I've spoken to her, or we've emailed back and forth. I believe she's a Taher through marriage. I think she has a
Mm,
different maiden name. I think.
mm,
I think her husband's a Taher. If I have that right, I think that's what she told
mm.
me. Because I
Yeah.
did ask her. I wondered if we were related. But I think there are a lot of Tahers in that area.
Oh, for sure. But
Yeah,
as far as our conceivable relationship link, yeah, we are probably distant cousins of some kind.
of some kind. Yeah, yeah,
That's right. I tend to think that my branch of the family came from the Cross Lake area on the Mullet Peninsula, just down from the Carne Golf Links,
yeah, yeah.
where on our first visit in 1989, Pat and I were taken out to that lake by Michael Garrity and Martin Garrity, each of them sons of the opposite name. It was Michael, son of Martin, Martin, son of Michael, Michael, son,
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. But we met a bunch of the Garritys out at Cross Lake, an area I would describe in sunlight, spectacularly beautiful. In bad weather, one of the bleakest looking places you could ever imagine being at any time. The range is just incredible. It's like music. It's like the dynamic range in music. You can be driving around on a drizzly day, anywhere, from Ballina down to Castlebar or whatever, and it's just the grayest, dimmest thing you can imagine. And you drive back, and the sun is out, and all these wildflowers pop everywhere, and the sky is incredibly blue, and the sea is sparkling and shimmering, and it's just amazing.
Growing up prior to 1989, was there any desire to go to Ireland, or was there any connection that you said, "Well, my family is from Ireland. I have to get there"? I asked this question because I know sometimes it's not until later in life where we actually make that connection and we want to go and sort of see where our heritage is from, and we're kind of, a lot of
Mhm.
people are distracted earlier in life with raising a family, all that kind of stuff. So it's later in life where you build that connection. I've been going since I'm 25. That's when I first started going. But I have a friend of mine
Yeah.
who I brought over to Ireland for his first time. And, he remembers that his father went to Ireland, but it never really crossed his mind. And he finally did. And he ended up connecting with all of his cousins over there. And now he's going over 2 or 3 times a year. And it's
Yeah.
later in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that happen with you?
Well, it wasn't compelling for me when I was young in that specific sense. On a larger sense, I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world, and that was the primary motivation for me basically settling in at Sports Illustrated when they recruited me, because I saw that as an option for being able to get out and see the world on somebody else's dime, which was definitely necessary back then because I didn't have the money to go traveling anywhere. But as far as thinking specifically of Ireland or of Scotland, my mother's country of origin, uh, not really, because my dad's history was something of a dead end. His father died when he was, I think it was like 4 years old. My dad just grew up kind of idolizing a father that he never knew, who died of bad water typhoid when he was about 32 years old. And so, my dad and his brother were essentially orphans. And all he knew about Ireland was secondhand stuff from the elders in New Richmond, but more prominently from movies. The Ireland that he knew was the Ireland of the Quiet Man, or Barry Fitzgerald, yeah, that kind of thing. And he loved it. He thought it was great, and he'd go around the house, mimicking Bing Crosby singing "How Are Things in Guacamole,"
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But he really didn't know anything about Ireland at all, and he knew that, and he admitted that. So it hadn't originally been that compelling, but it's when we were starting to plan for this first trip. By this time, I'd had some overseas trips, and so this was just the next one. That's when I started questioning my dad. What do you know? Where should I go? And he had nothing until I got in touch with that judge in New Richmond. But that set us off on this great quest. We were in Dublin, drove across the country, and then came up into County Mayo, spent a night in Westport at a bed and breakfast called Garrity's, naturally,
Okay.
and then finally drove on up through Castlebar and the beautiful kind of lake region that there's there, and then across the Great Blanket Bog, which I'm told is the largest blanket bog in all of Europe, meaning turf, peat,
Yeah. Yeah.
where they cut that. And again, in bad weather, looks really bleak, and in good weather, looks great. And we rolled into Belmullet, complete strangers, not having contacted anybody. But just every moment that we were there was pure discovery.
At that point, you did know that your family or your great great grandfather was from Belmullet, correct?
Yes, yes.
So how did you
From
feel?
from one source.
Right, from
So
one
so
source.
two things that we did. The first thing is, as soon as we saw the sign for Belmullet with the Irish spelling and pronunciation, which I can't begin to do justice to,
Yeah.
we stopped the car, and I got out and handed the camera to Pat, and I leaned on the sign before we'd even gone in to get my picture taken. The homecoming, the return of the not quite so native. Then we drove into town. We had a reservation at a B and B. I'm trying to remember. I think it may have been a Mrs. Riley, and she knew several Garrity's and immediately got on the phone and set it up for us for the next day that we'd meet with the original Martin and Michael Garrity, the old man and his son. And and I was researching at the time. I don't think I was planning on writing a story specifically, but I thought I needed to learn some things. So I was writing in my reporter's notebook just as if I was on an assignment. So I picked up a lot of information there. And then they said, let's take you out to the Mullet and we'll show you where the Garrity's came from. And that's what they did. Our viewers here obviously can't have a very strong mental picture of this area, but you essentially drive through the little heart of town, the town square, which is not square, and you hang a right and you drive over a little bridge which goes over a canal connecting two bays, Broadhaven Bay and Blacksod Bay. When you do that and you go just a few hundred yards more and turn left, you're turning onto the Mullet Peninsula, and the Mullet is where just an incredible history of of Irish despair and famine, grief, persecution in the days of the Black and Tans. Everything you can think of. But it also means that there's a wealth of stories, both in town in Belmullet and anywhere you go out on the peninsula, because not a ton has been written about that history. There's only a couple of books, but people there haven't forgotten it. And gosh, the Irish are great storytellers, aren't they? You
That's
sit
why
down
I'm
with these
here.
people, you
That's
just
why
sit
I'm
down with
here.
these people and cue them, and they start pulling up everybody remembers where they were on Bloody Sunday.
Right.
Everybody's got ghost stories and stories about phantoms and fairies. It's just everything. They'll tell you about the musical bridge at Bellacorrick. Uh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just an amazing environment. So we picked up a lot of that on that first trip. There was a Mrs. Garrity who was a Garrity by birth and by marriage, Annie Garrity. not uncommon back then. And she stood out by the whitewashed wall of her farmhouse and pointed out toward the water over there and said, "John, that's where your great grandfather got on the little boat to go out to the big boat to sail to America."
Wow,
And
how'd
I
that make
never
you how'd
forgot
that
that.
make you feel? What did that like, what kind of emotion did you feel with that?
Well, by this time, once we got there, it started triggering, a lot of the emotions and simply my historical interest that wasn't that strong before. But once you go to the place and it's real, and the connections of the people there is real, and it suddenly becomes clear to you that this was the actual place where your people came from. This is the world that they lived in, and particularly at a place out like the Mullet, it hasn't changed all that much. There are houses that are, more polished and newer, usually built by the same people who were living in the really crude stone cottages, for generations. But the landscape and everything is unchanged. And so it was easy for me to speculate, even when I'd be out on the golf course there, on the possibility that my great grandfather walked those very dunes and walked along the beach searching for driftwood or uh, uh, for salvaging contraband of stuff that had washed off freighters in storms and would be swept up on the beach there. Also very common, it turns out. Uh, and it created a real tangible link in my mind and my heart to those people. And I found it very moving, very compelling.
You really hit the mark in your book in chapter 14. You talked about an email that you received from a Colleen Larson, and her family was also from Belmullet, and she was a Garrity. Her grandfather was a Garrity. And she talked about how they changed their last name because the mail was getting all screwed up all the time.
Right,
So they
right.
changed the spelling of the name Garrity. And she wrote that she discovered in 1890 in the town of Erin, Wisconsin, there were 72 different families with the name Garrity. So you could understand how, uh, and I
Right.
think a lot of them came from the west of County Mayo. Is
Yes,
that correct?
yes, yes, absolutely. Rita Nolan was the author of the one really in-depth historical account of Belmullet and the Mullet. And my recollection from reading her book is that the emigrants from the famine time and subsequent, the rest of the 19th century, from the Mullet area, pretty much had three destinations that dominated where they all went. Obviously, following previous migrants to go to a place where there was somebody that was familiar. And there was some place in Canada that I can't remember. There was a township in Ohio, and the third one was the St. Croix River in Wisconsin, just outside Minneapolis and St. Paul. And that is exactly what seems to have transpired in Ancestral Links. Right at the very beginning of the book, in the prologue, I described the Immaculate Conception Church graveyard in New Richmond, and all the names that are on the headstones from that period are identical to the names in the Termankara Cemetery, in the Cross Cemetery, even the cemetery that's right out in front of the Carne Golf Links
Yeah.
when you drive up to it. So you've got the Garrity's, and you've got Riley's, and you've got Hughes's, and this, that, and the other. Uh, Even Lavelle's, which caught my eye when I was in visiting Ireland the first time. I thought, Lavelle's, what's that about? And I was told that they're actually descendants of sailors who were shipwrecked during the Spanish Armada.
Oh,
essentially shipwrecked and captured or whatever, but established themselves on the Mullet, and then subsequently emigrated in famine times and like that, and ended up in Wisconsin. But
wow.
to
That
see
so
that,
the
yeah,
Lavelle,
yeah,
yeah,
to
that
see
that name
those,
Lavelle is in my family as well. There was my fourth great grandmother was Mary Lavelle. But
yeah,
if you talk to people, a lot of people will say that the Lavelle name comes from Ackle Island, but I actually, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it really comes from the the Inishkey Islands.
yeah. Well, I've heard a couple of versions. They actually they're not mutually exclusive because they're both oriented toward the sea. That however
Mhm.
they got there, the Lavelles, ended up somehow shipwrecked or stranded or something
There is a
in
Lavelle's
Ireland.
pub out. Have you been to the Lavelle's pub
Oh
out?
yeah,
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 yeah. Patty Lavelle out by Eagle Island,
yeah.
and then there was a Lavelle's uh, taxi service for years. They specialized in carting happy warriors from the pubs back to their homes late at night, and then dealing with the wedding traffic. But yeah, this sort of three-way expedition away from the troubles and the famine and everything in Ireland to three separate destinations in the U.S. Is pretty well documented. Obviously, people from other parts of Ireland ended up going other places, and it's also not completely clear to me that a number of these people obviously came through Ellis Island or came through Boston, Philadelphia, and maybe were there for some time before they moved further west or out. So many of them were farmers. Obviously, if they wanted to live their own lives, their way, they would want to get away from the big city centers and go someplace where their skills were useful.
Going back to Colleen Larson, there's one quote that this is why I tie it to the podcast so much that I'm going to quote her. She said, "I wish I had been more interested in our heritage growing up, but living on a farm, my life was busy. My dad had lots of stories, and I'm sorry I never got to record them." That's the mission of this podcast,
Uh-huh.
is recording those types of things. That's what we're doing here. It's
Well, if you'll remember from my book, that was a key element in mine was my having interviewed my dad about his youth growing up among the Irish in New Richmond, the first decade of the 20th century is when he started living there and growing up and going to school. And he had great stories of all the interesting characters, that lived there, uh, the big changes that took place in that town. In his case, one of the big changes, fitting with the subject of the book, was the construction of the little 9-hole sand green golf course that he helped build back then, which would have been, I think, shortly after World War One. And his discovering golf and hitting golf balls. He had like one club and a few golf balls, and he was hitting them in a cow pasture down the street like that. He rode the rails. I think he said in this case the blinds between cars, which young people did to avoid having to pay into St. Paul's, and went to sporting goods store there and acquired Spalding's How to Play Golf. And that was a prized possession. And he got the golf club and the balls, and he came back and went to this cow pasture and propped the book open on the ground and painstakingly followed the instructions on how to hit it. He was inspired by a New Richmond resident, a young man who was a man of the world who had traveled out west, and he thought of him as wealthy. But he had discovered golf out on the West Coast and came back, and my dad had seen him hitting balls in this pasture, and that's what inspired him to want to do this. So, but it's the oral history aspect of it. Is that I'd grown up with my dad, who was a fantastic storyteller, and it occurred to me when I was in my 20s that uh, nobody else had heard these stories. My family would have gotten just a little bit of it, and I thought it was important to document that. And so I've got several hours of my dad talking
That is great.
about growing up. The only unfortunate thing is he didn't have many stories about the Irish in Ireland. He just knew about the Irish in America.
Right.
So thus the research, my going on sabbatical to write Ancestral Links.
The mission of this podcast is to create that space where we celebrate Irish culture and the storytelling and all that kind of stuff. And when I picked up your book, I mean, it really is. It's exactly what I'm trying to do in what you created in that book. Ancestral Links, just the name itself, it means two different things. It's great.
I have to give my golf editor at Sports Illustrated credit for that title. A few years later, when I went back to figure out about this golf course and how could there possibly be a world class golf course in the Belmullet that I had visited, it was to write a story about it, which I did. And which had a strong impact on a lot of Sports Illustrated readers who had connections to Ireland. But he's the one who came up with the title of the story, which was Ancestral Links. And the combination of the story that I wrote and the title that he had put on it, I think is what inspired my agent to say, John, this looks like a book. And yeah, apparently it was.
Yeah, apparently it was.
Yeah.
Great. It's such a great concept. It's all about heritage and memory and your link back home.
It's also it's a memoir. It's kind of a travelogue wrapped in a golf memoir, and it's a golf memoir because I came from a golf family. My older brother Tom uh, was a genuinely fine athlete, and he was the best golfer in the Midwest Kansas City region the generation before Tom Watson, former Missouri amateur champion, and he played on the tour for a short time back in '61. And he and Tommy Aaron were the two best rookies on the tour back then. Unfortunately, it was about 2, 3 years before money started to pour into the tour,
Oh,
and there was really no future in it. So he kind of did it for the experience, and had some top 12 finishes on the PGA Tour or whatever, but they paid nothing. I think the biggest check he ever got out there was $720 for 12th place in the Miami Sunshine Open or the Coral Gables Open or something like that. But it was a golf family. I grew up, with bookcases crammed with real literature, but also with golf books and golf instruction books. And that led to the accidental after 10 years at Sports Illustrated when they were looking for a golf writer because Dan Jenkins had left the magazine. I was very much a generalist at that time, wrote about everything. And so they had me cover several golf tournaments while they were out looking for a golf writer. And then they were startled to find out that I seemed to know something about that subject. And they made me it. But it's sort of just accidental, kind of serendipity that would happen. And it's all those elements coming together that would lead to me going back to Belmullet again after that one trip in 1989. Because if you think about it, the Belmullet that we encountered, although I was charmed by it because of the family connections and its sort of exotic nature, in 1989, it was a pretty rundown place. Half the storefronts, on the main drag, were derelict. We walked down the street late in the day, and you'd look to your right in what should be a shop window, and there would be no glass in the window, and there'd be a cow staring at you, standing, in weeds up to his eyeballs almost.
Mm.
There were no street lights. It got so dark at night. There were a few cars, but mostly bicycles. So 20 years later, when we go back, when I'm sort of on assignment to try to figure out how this golf course came to be, uh, it was totally different. The so-called Celtic Tiger had roared, and the European Union, there were roads being built and laws being enforced and all that, and the economy started to take off. We came back, and there were really attractive storefronts. There were not only cars; they tended to be Mercedes and BMWs. And out on the Mullet, uh, farmers, former farmers, were building vacation homes to live in and to rent out. I mean, just a total transformation from 1989. So I obviously I'd missed a lot during that time, but it was sort of evidence of the world finally catching up and finding Belmullet. One of the things I remember, not on that first trip back, but like the second or third when I went back and visited with my brother, uh, they had opened a new hotel, the Broadhaven Bay Hotel. And it's the first hotel that I was ever in that had modern flat screen TVs.
Mhm.
Not something in New York or in Beverly Hills or anything like that, but in
Yeah. Yeah.
Belmullet. And when you walked in to check in, and at the front desk, behind the front desk, they had the classic clocks on the walls. And it said like
Mhm.
Tokyo and
Yeah.
Geneva, and New York, Buenos Aires, and Belmullet,
Yeah.
which I loved. I thought,
That's
yes,
great.
we're part of the greater world now.
Let's talk a little bit about Carne itself. Pictures don't do it justice.
No,
There was a video on the Carne website that it's a video of you talking about the golf course, and this is where you can really kind of get a glimpse of how majestic it is. You're standing on top of one of the dunes, and
right.
it's an up close picture, but then it pans out, and
Yeah.
you turn into a little pea in the pea. And that's what makes it, that's what makes you actually be able to see the grandeur of those dunes. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yes. Well, it's the Carn Banks, and it was called that before the golf course. To the best of my knowledge, it's the most spectacular dunescape in golf. That there's some other places, my also beloved Oscarnish and the Hebrides, that's got a series of very, very big dunes. And Enniscrone has got big ones. Ballybunion's got some very big ones. But for just sheer grandeur, breadth, height, and everything, these are gigantic sand dunes. If you're a casual golf fan and you watch the British Open every year, Royal Birkdale, where they're playing this week, is probably the biggest, dunes in that rota. Uh, but for the most part, they're casually great dunes. They're, they're pretty easy to scale. They aren't gigantic. You can hit golf balls over them. But compared to Carn, they're kind of small fry. There's a tee on the existing composite golf course from the 27 holes that were built there on a par three, where you're standing up on the tee and you've got 360-degree view in every direction, an ocean, two bays, a town, everything you can think of. But if you look down over the edge off the tee, you realize, I'm like 4 or 5 stories up in the air. you don't want to fall off. You don't want to
Yeah.
fall off that tee.
Yeah.
It's just spectacular. And before there was a golf course, it was spectacular, and people knew it. And it was a great place, where the locals went hiking and picking wildflowers and the like, just because it was unbelievably beautiful and extreme.
It's unreal.
So I think I had said from the golf perspective that when you're playing Carn, those dunes can make you feel small. But then if you go up and play from up on top of the dunes, you felt like you were king of the world. Everything's at your feet. Yeah,
Yeah. That one par three where the green is all the way down and there's those two little bunkers
yeah,
off to the left. And it's like, I have a picture of me in the bunker. Obviously, I'm in the bunker
uh,
from that one. And somebody took a picture of me from the top of the tee, and I'm this
uh,
big in the
yeah,
bunker, and it's a par
yeah,
three.
yeah. It's just an amazing scale, and
Golf is it's a perfect bridge between generations. It's specifically for like father and son. I
yeah,
guess even father, son, and grandfather too. But
mhm,
I'm lucky enough. I had my son uh, with me, and we played Carn. Maybe it wasn't last year; it was the year before, I think. And it's such a great experience. We want to do it all the time now.
mhm,
I only want to go back and just go to Carn.
yeah, yeah.
It's great.
Well, but even if you go back, doing that, every time I go back, I rent a house or an apartment for a week to use as my base. Uh, but things are so close together, in Ireland. If you want a little more variety, you just drive an hour, uh,
Sure. Yeah.
maybe here more up to Enniscrone.
Yeah.
And it's also got a wonderful dunescape. You can drive down to Westport, which it's not strictly a links course, it's sort of part links, part parkland course, but beautiful views. The wind howls, just great fun to play. You've got a view of Crowpatrick across the water, across the bay. Just terrific. Sligo, Ross's Point, one of the great golf courses
Oh, yeah.
up there. So it's the only negative I can say about it now is since the world is finally catching on to the fact that all the great Irish courses, aren't down the Ring of Kerry and Killarney or the Dublin area, that there are these great courses in the Northwest. Uh, and finally, coming out of the pandemic, they're becoming financially successful. And so they aren't as cheap as they used to be. It used to be the greatest bargain in golf to be able to go play these great, Northwest Ireland golf courses for, just a fraction of what it costs to play great courses elsewhere. Now it's getting a little pricier. Fortunately, I have a lifetime membership at Carn.
Yeah. I think I'd like to pursue that myself,
Mhm.
but that's another story. um, I want to bring up this one part that's in the back of your book. It's on the back cover of your book. It says, "Here come the lambs to slaughter." I guess this was the starter. Maybe the
Yes,
starter, Chris, his name was. Chris
right.
grinned as four men staggered onto the first tee. The wind was blowing west southwest at 25 to 30 knots, gusting to 40. "Come on up, lads. Don't be shy. You're looking disgustingly fit for a golf society." Now that's not a common statement that you would hear from a starter here in the States.
No, 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 it isn't. And Chris was fantastic. He had an unbelievable sense of humor. He was a great storyteller, and but I it was sometime in the first week when I'd gone on sabbatical and gotten an apartment in Belmullet, and I was starting the research for what became Ancestral Links. I was out there one morning, not to play, but just to kind of get a sense of the place with the visitors who came. And it was one of those raw, blustery days, and you get a lot of them at Carne.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody was stepping up with varying degrees of informal garb, sweaters and knit caps pulled over their ears, jeans. This is not. I mean, a lot of golfers will be arrayed in conventional country club garb, but it's not required, and very often the elements don't allow for it. uh, and they'd all step up, and the opening tee shot on what was then the first hole is essentially blind. You're just hitting the ball out, upslope, big dunes on the left, stuff that looks
And it's a
vaguely
par
sinister
five.
off to the right, and all, and and you don't really warm up at Carne. They now have a little warm up area in their little range where you might be able to hit irons on, but just traditionally, nobody warms up. Nobody hits practice balls. You just go out on this exposed tee where the wind is howling, and you see grasses going like this off in the
Yeah.
distance, like
Yeah.
waves,
Yeah.
and clouds are scuttering over the top of everything. And I think the parallel that I used, it was really like being on a ship at sea in a storm, and because that's what the landscape looks like
Yeah.
when you're standing there. And so I think Chris's genius was he knew that people might get a little spooked on the first tee, so he just did everything possible to relax them, which included ridicule. Uh,
Yeah. Well, that
but
is, you know what,
charming, charming ridicule.
but it's also that Irish banter too, you know.
Yeah.
And he uses, I don't know if it's Chris, but in the YouTube video that takes you hole by hole, it's the first hole, par
Mhm.
five, and I wrote it down. I got it because it's so funny.
Okay.
This is on YouTube. Anybody could look it up. I'll put a link in the notes. He writes, probably the easiest hole on the course. This is that first hole, the par five,
Yeah.
over 500 yards. Probably the easiest hole on the course. If you don't par this one, you might as well come back to the bar and have a drink. The main thing, the main thing is to stay in the fairway. If you stay in the fairway after your drive, you're guaranteed a par. If you're not in the fairway, unfortunately, it could be carnage.
Uh, carnage, which is
Yeah,
the good
carnage.
the good pun. Yeah, I would resist a little bit his depiction of it being the easiest hole, in the sense that, yeah, that's true on a nice day. But if it's your first hole of a round and the wind is blowing 25 or 30 miles an hour left to right in particular, or right to left, it's a pretty wide open drive, but there's big dunes covered with very deep grass on both sides. And it's very hard for your first tee shot of the day to hit a straight ball that hits that big fairway. So people, and plus the wind very often just knocks the ball down, and you don't even get up near the top of the hill. So it's really a discouraging start for a lot of golfers when the
I
weather's
think
bad.
that's why there's the banter,
Yeah,
right? There's the
yeah,
banter.
yeah,
Now
exactly.
you can laugh at your game.
Yeah, I think the other thing that when Chris was doing the starter thing, I think he's telling some of these stories to try to convince the players not to turn this into a scorecard round, to keep their eyes open and to appreciate the landscape and remark on the holes, but not worry about their game, not expect to shoot their handicap the first time out on a links course like this, because that's typically what American golfers do when they go over there. They're really interested in the golf courses and they want to play all these things and put them on their bucket list. But they also want to play well. They want to shoot good scores.
Yeah,
And it's really hard to do, when you're not used to playing in those conditions.
yeah.
And it can spoil the experience for a lot of golfers.
It's just the way you go into it. You got to go in with the right mindset.
Yeah, we
You
we
know.
had a writer at I don't think it was Sports Illustrated, might have been on golf.com when we were associated with them, who wrote a story about him going on one of the golf tours over there. So it's, you play 8 courses in 7 days or something, and you're chasing around, British Open road of courses or something like that. Experience of a lifetime. And he described how in 2 or 3 rounds, his game just went to pieces. He couldn't play. He was getting angrier and angrier. He was practically having a stroke. And he had to have some people on the trip talk him down and, get him out of that frame of mind and say, you got to, the thing I always recommend for people when they play the first time over there is if they're in a foursome or something like that, don't play your scorecard golf. I take people out and we play a scramble. We play a 4-ball scramble, and the goal will be to see if we can play the round without making a bogey. And the main thing that really works with this idea is that almost always somebody gets a ball in play, and then you're in a fairway or just in the near rough and
Yeah.
up there, and the next shot you hit is the shot that the course is inviting you to play or challenging you with, not something with grass up to your knee trying to hit out sideways
Which is going
to
to
a
ruin
place
the
where you
rest of
can't
your.
see where you're
Yeah.
going. Because
Yeah.
when you play that kind of golf, if you don't know the course, when you finish the round, you still don't know the course. You never saw it. You never
Right.
hit the shots, that they
That's
are
great advice.
decided.
Great
Yeah,
advice. Go and play around a
yeah,
scramble. It's great.
yeah, yeah.
Scramble's fun.
Well, of course, at my age, that's what I play all the time anyway.
It is fun. We have, I don't know if I told you this, but the bunch of retirees from FDNY, we started a local club. We have 81 members right now, and I think by the end of August we're going to have another 20. So we'll be over 100 members. It's mostly scramble. Guys are mostly some guys will play their own ball. It's up to you what you want to do, but most guys play scramble,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of fun. So when you were at Carne, on a typical day, what did you do? Did you play 1 round, 2 rounds? What'd you do in the morning? What'd you do when you played golf, after golf? What was a typical day? Because you were there months on end, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to remember. It was about 5 months, I think, with one brief trip back to Kansas City to pay bills and to make sure everything was in good repair. That sort of thing. I didn't play a whole lot of regular rounds during the week. I managed to get myself an Irish handicap, and that made me eligible to play in the club competitions, the Belmullet Golf Club competitions on Sunday, which were often Stableford events, but there were other various setups, week to week. What I was doing the rest of the week, and I didn't play every day. I got to admit, sometimes if the weather was really foul, I'd say, well, if it doesn't improve this afternoon or something like that, I'll do other things. And also, I was spending a lot of my time making appointments and interviewing people for the book, Garrity's, but uh, all the people that were involved in creating the Carne Golf Links, telling me the story of how it came into existence and how it came to be what it was. But I had one organizing principle, both for the book and for my time there. And that came from my brother. I was covering the Open Championship a year or two before the book. And I invited my brother to meet me in Ireland after the week of the Open Championship that I was covering. He'd never been to Ireland. And so he joined me, and we spent several days in Belmullet on that trip, and he played the Carne Golf Links and absolutely loved it. Said it was the experience of his life. Uh, and when we were back in the States, some months later, I was on the phone with him, and he said, Johnny, I keep thinking about the 17th hole at Carne. It's this remarkable, punitive, very difficult par four with giant troubles on the left and giant troubles on the right. And then up at the green, hazards everywhere, disaster looming around every corner. He said, "I'm just fascinated with that hole. If I ever had the opportunity, what I'd like to do is play number 17, start off with 3 balls in my pocket, tee it up, hit 3 tee shots, go find the ball, hit 3 balls into the green, get it up on the green, putt out, record the scores, and then pick up the balls, walk back to the tee, and do the same thing over and over again until I'd played the hole 18 times." And he said, "I think that 80 would be a very good score." And I was kinda going, "Yeah, you think?" I mean, it's a par 4 that from the most people, it's really a par 5, but nominally, because of the length and discounting the wind, it's a par 4. Now, the important thing to consider there is he thought 80 would be a good score. This was a former touring pro talking, not me,
Right.
about a 7 handicap at best, like that. But after that conversation, it kinda stuck in my mind. The reason he said it would be a great experiment, because he said there's so many different ways to play this golf hole, you know? Do you play it safe off the tee and not hit driver? But that risks, if the wind picks it, or you can fall in the incredible gorge down to the right. But if you hit driver and hit it really, really good, there's a bit of a turn in the fairway, the ball can run right off a cliff down to another problem up here. Or do you hit it up on these grassy moguls up on the right side, which is not a great place to be, but you can see your target from up there, and the lie is usually pretty good, and you're elevated. So it's just all these different considerations that he thought that he could think I could think of a half dozen or more ways to play that golf hole, and that's why his 18 ball challenge sounded so cool to me. Um, well, I was looking for a framing device for Ancestral Links when I went off to do the research for it, because I knew to get people to read through an entire book that's got golf in it and family, genealogy, things that aren't necessarily captivating for other people. They're interested in their history, but not so much yours.
Right.
uh, I thought, why don't I accept his challenge and do this 18 ball challenge on the 17th hole? I had to change it somewhat because there's no way I could shoot 80 on with 18 balls there. I decided that 90 would be a good score for me.
Okay.
Uh, Something I thought would be achievable, but still would be a challenge. And so that's how I set it up. I knew I would use that gimmick in the book to create a little bit of suspense and give people reason well, can he do it? Can he do it, or is he going to be frustrated? And so that became the organizing principle for my golf while I was there, and it turned out to be a good gimmick because the first time I tried to do it, just the first 3 balls that I hit put me in incredible trouble that I couldn't recover from, and I essentially, before I even got to the green, said, "Well, this wasn't the real first attempt. This was just a trial to see what was involved." But then, as the days and weeks moved on, it continued to be really, really difficult. More difficult than it had ever been when I played the hole just on its own, without knowing all the trouble that was there. Uh, I forget how many times I'd played 17 before I was there on the sabbatical, but say 10 times or 12 times. Really, I don't remember it being in particularly great trouble. On it, I'm usually made bogey, made a couple of pars, never threatened birdie or anything. But as soon as I started the actual challenge of trying to get this thing done, boy, I had lots of other scores on tops of bogeys and double bogeys. And I used to record how I performed on each ball on the back of my little business cards from Sports Illustrated with a special code. So, and as it turned out, it would take me the entire time of my sabbatical to get to the point where I could actually where it was within reach. And I won't provide a spoiler here to say what happens in the closing
Okay.
chapters of the book. But a lot of my golf is like that. Otherwise, I played a lot of solitary golf, which was a habit of my dad's. He loved that. He was a garrulous personality, but at the same time, he loved getting out on the golf course by himself. And I already kind of had that gene in me, and I liked it as well. And nothing suited me better than to get out there 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the evening, maybe after dinner, and just a handful of people spread across the course. And if it was a sunny day, the sun would sparkle on the Atlantic, and the views would just be incredible in all directions. And it was just really, really special. I'm not a particularly spiritual person, but there is something kind of metaphysically enhanced about being on a world class golf course and having the feeling that it's all your own.
Were there any other special holes for your favorite holes that you had there?
Yeah. Now it's difficult to talk about this because the orientation of the golf course has changed and they've added 9 more holes and mixed them into a composite course and everything. So the course I'm talking about is the original Eddie Hackett designed 18. And so the original front nine was on the less dramatic inland side of the dunes. It goes through some of the dunes as well, but not quite as dramatic, not quite as spectacular. But there are several holes on that original front nine that are among my favorite anywhere in the world. The third hole is a medium long par four, absolutely straight from an elevated tee down to a green that's backed by a kind of gentle dune, not one of the big dunes behind the green, but just enough to catch a ball and keep it from rolling past. But the fairway, uh, I think I described it in one of my stories or in the book. When the sun was out and you saw all the shadows working across these little moguls, it's just the natural, no bulldozer rolled over all that. Uh, I said when the sun hits it right, it looks like windblown silk, which is a pretty good description of what's going on
Yeah.
there. So it's just fantastic, and you can see the ball on your drive all the way to where it lands. And then your second shot is a genuine links golf shot because it's a two-tiered green, low in front, and then it kind of slopes up and runs on back. And the proper shot, if you really want to get up on that upper level, if the flagstick is up there, uh, is to hit a low, flight the ball in low, bounce it in front of the green, and run it up. And it's so much fun to play those shots. And all the shots on there, the one thing about Carne has got great variety. There's target golf in some places, and then there's links golf in other places. But I just absolutely love the fun of playing those more ground-based shots, which we don't have much here in the States.
No.
But when you hear people talking about links golf, that's what they're usually describing if they give in to the course and say, "Yeah, I got to play it this well if I'm going to score." And one of the things I do, like I say, I'd go out in the evening, nobody else around, and I'd be in the fairway on the third hole, and I just drop 3 or 4 balls and just keep trying to hit that shot and get it to get up on that upper level close to the pin. Just wonderful fun. The ninth hole, which is now the 18th hole of the original Hackett course, but it's right up by the clubhouse. And I've never seen a golf hole like this in my life. You're up on the top of a dune, hitting back up toward the clubhouse. The landscape drops down sharply in front of you. Then there's this big canyon floor, which is pretty flat, with a giant dune on the right and big dunes on the left. And it goes out there for, I don't know, 200 and some odd yards. and then suddenly the land just whoop goes straight up again. It's like a wall, an escarpment of grass. And if you hit a decent drive, you get fairly close to that wall. And in fact, you often get up so close that you can't see any green at all, and you never know what's happening to your ball when it's up on top. So you don't learn a whole lot. Time after time, you come back and you play this hole and realize, I still don't know what happens to the ball when it gets up there. If your approach shot is offline, it falls into another remarkable deep grassy canyon down right in front of the green. It's just absolutely crazy. But on a good day from the tee, if the wind is behind you, and back then I was still a long hitter, you could actually fly it up on top of that cliff, which was like the great achievement. I made it. I got up there, and I'm actually going to have a short approach shot where I can see where I'm hitting it. I just love that. And there was
Yeah.
also the seventh hole, which is a par three from down on the valley floor, the agricultural kind of area. And there's a little, on the other side of the fence, there's a little landing strip for small planes over there. It's a par three that hits straight up to a completely flat green backed by another giant dune, but that's carved out of the dune. And it's got to be, I don't know, 30 feet in the air. Like you can't, you can't see the bottom of the flag from where you're hitting it, and you may be hitting a, 178-yard shot or 187. I forget what the distances are from various tees, but people are hitting fairway woods and, at best long irons, and the wind is usually howling, and it's just a hoot. I mean, that's the thing about Carne is that there are a number of golf holes there that when you see them, you say, this does not remind me of any hole I played before. It's different.
That's great. I mean, how many places can you find that are like that?
Yeah, yeah. And the putt and is how many par threes are there? Three nines. Are there two on each end? Yeah, whatever it is, whether it's five or six, something like. And again, none of them are the same. They're all oriented differently to the wind. They're short. They're long. They're downhill severely. They're uphill severely. And they're just all great fun to play. Yeah, you kind of get the impression I like this golf course.
I do, and I mean, like I said it before, I just can't wait to go back. I got to get back like now.
And I was excited on my last trip when we got that news that Golf Digest had put Carne at number 63 in the world ranking.
Yeah, yeah,
It just seems to be it's a tribute to the commitment, the dedication, and the diligence of the people of Belmullet and the people involved in creating that golf course that they were able to get through the bad times and the pandemic when it looked
yeah.
like it would all die and bring it up to a level where it can get that kind of world recognition.
Did you ever go to the Western Strand?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
My
that was a
first
nice
my
place.
f first, couple of trips back there for when I was doing the original Sports Illustrated story or whatever, I stayed at the Western Strand. Over the years, I can tell you that they've had very good food. It's a nice place to go, to dine. There's a great pub in the hotel as well. But
Oh,
I really loved it. Jim Eng, the architect, who co-designed the new 9 holes up there. He loved the Western Strands. Even when the Broadhaven Bay Hotel and the Talbot, everything opened up, he was dedicated to the Western Strands. He would have
it's
have
the
none
only
of his
place
new
I've
stuff.
ever even stayed at. I've only stayed at the Western Strand.
Uh-huh.
I've been to the Broadhaven for
Uh,
that's where we had our family reunion, but I never stayed there.
yeah.
But I've only ever stayed at Western Strand. You know, they got the bar in the back. Last time I was there, they had a full traditional music band playing back there, and then
Uh-huh.
afterwards, actually, my cousin Chloe is a singer. She lives in the area, and she's a really good singer. She was singing that night, so It's a great spot for
Yeah,
some
I
hikes
haven't been
and
there.
music.
I haven't been there for years. I did notice a number of years ago that the facade had been restored and upgraded and looked really nice.
Let's talk real quick about Belmullet, the area. So obviously, everybody wants to go play a round of golf, but after golf, it's very important to some people the 19th hole, where they go afterwards. So, do you have any suggestions of things to do after golf? Places that you should see in Carne, like Blacksod Bay or um, Una's, or whatever. What are the things you would suggest in the Belmullet area that are must do things?
Well, it always begins for most people, at least for unlike people like me. I'm a non-drinker. Nonetheless, McDonald's Pub, which is directly across the street from the apartment I had when I was on sabbatical over there.
So you hung out with Porig.
It's the destination pub for there. Porig Conroy, also being the funeral director. McDonald's funeral home is just a couple of doors down, and he's frequently called away from his duties behind the bar to pick up his other duties,
Yep.
which involves picking up bodies.
Which
Uh,
the whole building, the bar actually used to be the funeral, the office. He told me that right behind,
mhm.
there's like a snug back there
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
that was the
exactly.
office where people would come
Yeah,
in and make their
yeah.
arrangements.
Now it's just fantastic the reputation this place has. It's very small, and it doesn't have spectacular accoutrements or design or anything. It's about the size of a shipping container packed with people, and usually a musician in the corner sitting on a stool, uh, you know, uh, banging out traditional songs. People spilling out onto the sidewalk with their pints. Uh, it's just an amazingly natural kind of place. It just seems so genuine that everybody loves it. And so in recent years, particularly when Belmullet, the Broadhaven Bay Hotel, and the Talbot Hotel, which has been added since then, a beautiful boutique hotel, it's sort of become a wedding capital of Western Mayo. And so Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, wedding parties will take every room in town, and they'll have all their activities in the hotels and receptions and all that, but then they all spill out into the streets. And there's several pubs downtown, but the biggest attraction has always been
McDonald's.
McDonald's,
Yeah.
and that's terrific.
AKA the Lobster Pot.
Yeah, yeah,
You
uh,
can get in, but you can't get out.
right. That's a great place, and if you're lucky, Potter might sing you a song as he performs as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep, yep.
other activities, I'm partial to heading up out of town along the coast and going up to Fields, which is the Neolithic site uh, up on the cliffs, up on the North Mayo cliffs, which are uh, uh, kind of similar to the Cliffs of Moher, the more famous Cliffs of Moher. But the North Mayo cliffs are very impressive. But going up from the cliffs up kind of, I don't know if we call them mountains, but, they certainly got that kind of profile. There's a historical site that this area used to be a forest with giant oak trees and all kinds of things. Climate change from earlier times changed it, and it became a bog, and it's turf, and it accumulated millimeter by millimeter over the years and covered up the civilization, the stone walls and the houses and the old trees, petrified trees that used to be there. And they have a museum there, and they take you out on tours and show you how they explore the communities that used to live under there, using like long spears of rebar that you can just push through the soil several feet down, and to hit the walls, to hit the structures and everything, where they've been able to map out what that society was like. And I do I do have a story about that uh, on our first trip when Pat and I uh, first drove into Mayo. We came in from Ballina on that route instead of the more inland route. And I'd never heard of Cage of Fields or everything, but there were a couple of signs that said Neolithic site ahead. And we said, well, why don't we check it out? And when we got to the North Mayo Cliffs, it was there on our left, and we pulled over into kind of an apron for what was an entrance. But there was a big chain link gate that was closed with padlocks on it. And there was a big sign that said, Neolithic site closed for renovations. I thought, what?
What are they putting on a new bathroom?
Yeah. Obviously, they were referring to the museum, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But so we didn't visit it on that trip. But I've been back several times since with guests, and they usually enjoy that a lot. Another thing to do is to go out on the Mullet Peninsula and go down to the Blacksod Lighthouse, and it's got a history for being involved with the weather report that enabled the launch of D-Day. And in any histories that you read about D-Day and the bad weather that preceded it, and the fear that there would be bad weather that would destroy the landing troops and lead them to slaughter. The go-ahead apparently came from a weather report that was issued from that lighthouse. And that's worth a visit. And shortly before you get there, now there's the Heritage Center, SOLAS, which is a terrific museum uh, dedicated to life on the peninsula, the fishermen who were there, the farmers over the years, all the history, but also as a embarkation point for the coffin ships during the famine times. They've got the passenger manifests for many of the sailings. They've got all kinds of other historical stuff. There's great stuff on the lighthouses with fantastic film of the lighthouses when they're besieged by the great North Atlantic storms and hurricanes, when the waves crash against the rocks and go and spark up 250 feet in the air and crash over the tops of the lighthouses and break the lenses. One of the stories in my book, told to me by an old lighthouse keeper who'd been a member at Carne, was of a storm actually breaking out the lenses up at the top of the lighthouse, filling it up with water. So when they came to open it up again, they had to drill holes in the doors down below to let the water run out so that they could open up the doors.
Wow.
And I heard that story and I thought, that is absolute BS. I mean, talk about your storytelling. Then I found a book on Irish lighthouses, and it was absolutely accurate.
Wow.
Word for
Yeah.
word. So I would recommend that people, particularly anybody who's over there on an Irish American heritage trip, you've got to go visit Solas. It's just a few kilometers down from the golf course.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice place. I went in there the last time I was there. Very, very nice place.
There's a nice breakfast and lunch room there
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
And John Connery, the famous local chef, actually operates that. So it's not just a
Okay.
place where you can get a snack. It's really good food.
Yeah. So, John, is there anything else you'd like to add while we wind up?
Well, I think I should mention that in late May, which is the last time I went back to Belmullet and Carne, it was International Members Week, which I had never attended. Something like 250 American, Canadian golfers and their spouses or whatever for a week of golf and festivities. Great fun. on the Wednesday while I was there, we got the news that Golf Digest, on their list of 100 best courses in the world outside of the United States, that Carne had debuted at number 63 on that list.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah, and that's
That's
coming from nothing. I mean, this was just a little place with no money,
built by
hard to
farmers, right?
access.
Built by
But
farmers.
yes, 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 on a kind of wasn't a welfare scheme, but it was a government grant for 27 farmers to work on this golf course. The first 9 holes took 7 years before they opened it, and they were working almost entirely with shovels and rakes to build this course. One of an example of how it was done. Eddie Hackett was the famous old pro and course designer who laid it out. And there's features galore on this golf course, but if he saw on a hole where he thought it needed a little something, just a little more contour or something to kind of guard the green or something, he'd just have them pull up with a dump truck full of sand and just empty it on the spot it was dictated. And then they'd leave it alone for a year or two. They just let the wind and the rain shape it naturally. And then they'd throw grass seed down on it. And 3 years later, you'd have something that looked like it had been there for eons.
Wow.
But that's the low budget way to build a golf course.
John, listen, it was great having you on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you being on the show. I really enjoyed having the discussion about heritage and tying in the whole thing with golf. I'm going to put a link to where people can get a copy of your book on the notes to the podcast.
Thank you.
And really appreciate it. Do you ever get out to New York?
Occasionally, not as often as usual.
Well, if you do get out here, please look me up and maybe we
Yeah.
can get around to golfing.
Absolutely. That would be great. And thanks for having me.